Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. It's finally Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Today, we have a relatively short chapter in Karma. It's only 14 pages, and we are reading chapter 4. And the chapter is titled The Great Karmic Warehouse. Sutra number 4. However profound it is, everything that comes from memory spells karmic bondage. Categories of consequence. In the previous chapter, we looked at the 8 membranes of memory, 4 of which are collective and 4 of which are individual. However, the yogic system now leads us deeper into an exploration of individual karma. If you find yourself overwhelmed by the classifications that follow, you do not get disheartened. As a reader, you do not have to remember these categories in order to decode karma. It would certainly be easy to dispense with these classifications to make a karma book a simpler, breezier read. But if I include them, it is to reveal the incredible intellectual precision and sophistication of which the ancient yogis and sages were capable. Even if you were simply to read these categories without making any attempt to remember them, you would have a deeper and richer understanding of the subject. The workings of karma are complex, but the classification is a simple one. Let us take a look at 4 essential categories of karma or consequence. Behind every individual, one vast storehouse of karma, the sum total of the accumulated memory, in Sanskrit termed sanchita. For our purpose, let us simply call it accumulated karma. This is like a great warehouse in which all 8 types of memory are contained: the elemental, atomic, evolutionary, genetic, individual, karmic, sensory, articulate, and inarticulate. We carry this enormous volume of information with us all the time. The quantity might vary, but every human being carries this phenomenal karmic inheritance. Now, within the vast storehouse of accumulated memory, there is an important dimension called allotted karma. This, in turn, contains 2 aspects. Let us call them actional karma in the present and actional karma in the future. Let us look at what these terms imply. For the vast storehouse of Sanchita, a segment of memory ripens. It surfaces and comes to the fore, demanding immediate attention. This is your allotted karma. Every human being has a certain allotment of karma for a lifetime, called prarabdha karma. In the Indian tradition, it is the karma that needs to be handled now. The rest continues to remain latent and unripe in the vast storehouse of accumulated memory. So your current lifetime is a certain allotment of karma and a distinct amount of memory playing itself out. The nature of this allotment varies from person to person. For each person, the life energy works differently. Each person has a different percentage of energy dedicated to the physical activity, a different percentage to intellectual activity, and a different percentage to emotional activity, a different percentage to energy activity, and a different percentage to the capacity of meditativeness or inner stillness. The nature of a person's allotment is actually visible at an early age. Parents can see it clearly in 2 children. One may have certain propensity for physical activity, while the other may be quieter. These differences are sometimes even subtly visible in newborn infants in a hospital maternity ward. Later, of course, differences grow because of the type of environment the child grows up in, the food they eat, the type of attitudes they develop. But very early differences are determined by nature of each child allotted karma. Now, every spiritual process is essentially about digging into the storehouse of the accumulated karma. Spiritual practitioners are people in a hurry. They want to dig up as much as possible and work it out, rather than wait for each allotment to ripen in its own time. This is why so much of the spiritual process is action-oriented. Spiritual seekers want to handle 10 lifetimes of karma in a single lifetime if they can. The spiritual journey also teaches them to avoid accumulating new karma and to limit the consequences of their allotted karma. In this manner, they work through large karmic volumes at great speed. How does one feel when one is emptied out one's allotted karma? Usually, life grows more relaxed, less reactive, less compulsive. Strong likes and dislikes, whether about people, places, food, work, or politics, begin to weaken. Comfort zones become less important. Initially, you may find you want to slow down and live quietly. After that, you will choose to engage with the world again, but this time it will be in a wonderfully conscious way. Your life is now full of choices. We now come to another aspect of allotted karma. This is actionable karma in the present, or karma that compels outward action. We cannot resist its power. There are many impulses and propensities in a human being, but not all of them propel us to external action. However, every individual carries another type of karma that must be acted upon externally. The rest can be handled internally. How you handle your externally actionable karma in the present is significant because it creates consequences for the future. When some trigger compels action, how consciously you perform that action becomes important. If you do it unconsciously, that unconsciousness will generate an enormous amount of karma, and that is how karma perpetuates itself. Take the human population as an example. The moment two people act, you have consequences. A man and woman get together and may produce a child. This is a simple physical example of how actions breed consequences, but the consequences can be on many levels in terms of thoughts, emotions, ideas, opinions, and actions. Here is where the idea of good karma becomes important. You can alter your future simply by performing the right kind of action in the present. You can transform your future without any spiritual process, without any elevation of consciousness. When you perform the right actions today, a positive future is assured. But if you become meditative, you go a step further. Every spiritual tradition has encouraged people to meditate for this reason. When you become meditative, you do not merely acquire positive karma, you stop breeding karma altogether. In all spiritual traditions, to become an ascetic means just this: you stop breeding karmic consequences. Let me offer a personal example. As a guru, when I am conducting a spiritual program, I am in a particular mode. If I embrace everyone before me with tears of joy and inclusiveness, it will not breed any karmic consequences. But if I do the same with only one person whom I know well, that same embrace will create consequences. This is because the inclusiveness embrace has no karmic substance to it. It is absolutely conscious action. This is why, at a program, I never focus on the faces I know well. If I choose to meet another gaze, I always pick a totally unknown face to address. As soon as you focus on someone you know and talk to them, it can turn into an entangling process. It would breed consequences for them, for me, and for the entire situation. However, if I am developing a project, I do, of course, talk to intimate groups of people. I know this will not breed any entangling consequence for them, because what we are evolving is not about them or me, but about a larger vision. This is not entanglement because it is an all-inclusive involvement. There is nothing selective about it. Look at it this way. If your actions are coming from your memory, they will most certainly breed karma. We always say, therefore, that all human actions can be only of two kinds: those that destroy karma and those that breed karma. As a guru, my business is to impart the technologies that promote the former. So how you handle your actionable karma in the present is very important. If you are not conscious about it, you may think you are being spiritual, but you may simply be spiraling into entanglement. In modern-day terminology, you could see the unconscious mind as accumulated karma, the subconscious mind is as allotted karma, and as your conscious mind as actionable karma in the present. This is not entirely accurate, but in most broad terms, it is a useful way to understand the differences. We now come to the other aspect of a lot of karma. This is the actionable karma in the future. Your unconscious action today will lead to consequences that compel your actions tomorrow or a year later, or some would say even a lifetime later. In other words, no matter what you do, life will drive you into a place where you have to act. If you borrow from a bank, for instance, or have mortgage, your karma tomorrow is determined by today's action. Similarly, if you have a child, you are committing yourself to at least a 20-year project. You have to think about providing for that child, sending them to school, putting them through college, ensuring that they stand on their own 2 feet. What you do or do not do tomorrow is not decided by a whim. A simple action breeds enormous consequences. It is actionable karma in the future that perpetuates the human cycle of compulsiveness, action leading to what the Indian spiritual tradition sees as cycles of birth and death. It propels human beings to return to the embodied state time and again in order to work out their karmic inheritance. If you find the idea of future lifetimes problematic, do not be distracted by it at this stage, nor is it essential to understanding karma. For the true yogi, there is just one life. Yesterday you may have been dressed in one way, today you may be dressed in another. Life, however, stays unchanged. If you handle your actionable karma in the present consciously, you will not breed any compulsive actionable karma in the future. That is the key to handling memory. Let me stress that there is nothing wrong with a bank loan or a mortgage or a family. Indeed, the more complex your karmic memory is, the more varied and interesting your life becomes. But the aim is to enjoy the process of life, not be trapped by it. Hence the importance of eliminating all manner of unconscious karma. You do not want to accumulate any karma that will compel you to act compulsively in the future. To continue with the earlier analogy, when conducting a program, I embrace everyone inclusively and choicelessly. I do not choose to favor one over the other. If I were selective, the spiritual transmission would not be as effective. It is the choicelessness of my action that makes it impactful. The karmic trap is always in the choosing. Choice is the great human gift. Freedom is the human possibility. However, instead of choosing inclusively, most human beings choose selectively. Most choose on the basis of compulsive likes and dislikes, on the basis of attraction and aversion. But when your involvement is absolute, that is, inclusive, you are not operating out of past memory. This means there is no compulsion, no consequence, no entanglement, no choice, no friend, no foe. When you perform actionable karma in the present like this, you breed no actionable karma in the future whatsoever. On the other hand, if you choose to involve yourself selectively based on past memory, the consequence lives with you. You are breeding more memory, whether physical, emotional, or intellectual. You are creating karma that will compel you into situations where you have to act in the future. Once you understand how the karmic mechanisms work, you know the basic difference between involvement and entanglement. Most people do not understand the fact that it is possible to be absolutely involved without getting entangled. For instance, whether I meet a stranger or a friend, my interiority remains the same. My involvement is total. I may communicate and act differently, but internally I remain the same. My way of being remains unchanged, although what I do or say is relevant to the situation and the person. This breeds no karma. When involvement is selective, you fall into the trap of entanglement. Here's the central problem. Selective involvement leads to suffering and karma. Detachment leads to lifelessness. But involvement need not come from a place of memory. It can be conscious. For most people, involvement springs from memory and is compulsive. Once memory enters, action is enslaving. Without memory, however, you can operate consciously. When your action is unsullied by past impressions, it is liberating. From being to doing to having. The human equation was always meant to be like this, to move from being to doing to having. This means we were never meant to act in order to find fulfillment. Fulfillment was seen as an inner condition. It cannot be pursued externally. We act in order to express our fulfillment, not acquire it. We act in order to celebrate our inner completeness, not pursue it. For most people, however, the simple equation is reversed. Most people do in order to be. They act because they feel incomplete. Their action is prompted by a desire to acquire something or to enhance their identity in some way. This is the ancient hunter and gatherer impulse, which still endures in human beings. It is this need to act in order to accumulate, whether it is physical, emotional, or intellectual satisfaction. It is action impelled by a desire to augment themselves, to become more than what they are. They act in order to have, and they have in order to be. This is tragic. Most people have already determined what they want to have, therefore their doing is invariably to acquire something. Someone wants to earn fame so they might get into movies or write a book, for instance. Their identity is now film star or author. They identify with this label. It now determines their being. Similarly, someone else wants to acquire status of sportsman or politician or businessman. People even go around calling themselves golfers. I play golf and write books and ride motorcycles, but I am not a golfer, an author, or a biker. I am not doing in order to acquire identity. The way I am is untouched by what I do. I am not a yogi because I teach yoga. It is not my activity that makes me a yogi. It is my being that makes me a yogi. Yogi is a description of my inner condition, not my activity. When you live like this, who you are always communicates itself in its own subtle way to people. The fragrance of who you are always gets conveyed. People sense that I am operating from this place of inner freedom, even if they don't understand how it works. Very young people come up to me and treat me like their contemporary or even their close friend. They call me Sadhguru, but it is not a term of distant reverence. It is one of familiarity, of affection. Now, if my talks were about quoting from a scripture, such friendship and affection would be impossible. Scripture means memory. Memory means hierarchy. This hierarchy turns one thing into sacred, another into filthy. What we consider sacred becomes an authority. What comes from an authority becomes our truth. And this kind of truth renders us incapable, paradoxically, of ever experiencing real truth. We have reached a point today where authority has become the truth, but soon as we turn inward, we realize that truth is only authority. However profound it is, all that comes from memory spells karmic bondage. I do not come from a place of karma, so I do not breed karma. It is as simple as that. What I say comes from inner experience and from a state of knowing, not from previously acquired knowledge. This is citta, contentless intelligence. The one thing that human beings simultaneously suffer and cherish is memory. You try to acquire and freeze memory in order to acquire identity. You are trying, therefore, to do in order to be. But neither your identity nor memory is essentially about you. Think about it. When you are sitting in a cafe drinking your cappuccino, you can enjoy only $4 worth of coffee. Whether you have $10 billion in the bank is irrelevant. The money exists only in your memory. To carry memory around in your memory means you are a creature of the past. If you base your future on your past, you are good as dead. And this is why faces around us are being so grave. The grave is, after all, the abode of the past, and that is karma too, a habitat of the past. Your actionable karma in the future ensures that your future is exactly like your past. When nothing new happens to you, it is time to rest in peace. The causes of unease and disease. Allotted karma in most human beings has its own level of complexity. A large part of it is devoted to physical action. Other segments are devoted to thought, emotion, and meditativeness. The problem of the modern life is that most people's physical and emotional energy does not find full expression in a lifetime. People of civilized society carry a great deal of unexpressed emotion within. Now, if emotions never find full expression, the energy can turn around and become deeply damaging to one's own health and well-being. This accounts for the upswing of depression and mental illness across the world. It is said that 1 of every 5 Americans suffer from some form of psychological illness in a given year, and 50% will suffer a mental ailment at some point in their lives. A staggering statistic. The problem is that a civilized society regards the uninhibited expression of emotion as a sign of weakness or a lack of sophistication. The suppression can create untold havoc in the human system. I would say 99% of people in the world never find full expression for their emotions. They are afraid of their love, their joy, their grief, everything. They are afraid of their problem. It is seen as non-genteel or unladylike. To cry loudly is a problem. It is seen as unrefined and indecorous. We have set up a deeply restrictive culture for ourselves. Now, the major portion of your allotted karma is devoted to your physical activity. The body remains the major source of the identification for most people even today. So the ratio varies from person to person. 95% of the time, allotted karma is oriented towards external action. However, the level of activity in modern life has decreased drastically because people do not use their body the way they used to. If this unused energy remains dormant in the system, it could easily cause disease. The modern mind is going through a unique kind of neurosis for this reason. When you involve yourself intensely in physical activity, you expend a great deal of nervous energy. But now that human beings have become so inactive, almost every person suffers from some kind of anxiety or unease. This is simply because of a trapped physical energy. In comparison, you will find that those committed to some form of intense physical exercise are often at a different level of balance and peace, and much less entangled in sexuality and other physical drives. This is because one aspect of the person has found full expression. One fallout of an activity is disease. Trapped energy can also cause physical restlessness and agitation, which accounts for the state of chronic unease and disquiet that plagues the modern individual. You will notice that the very way people sit and stand reveals an absence of ease. They may have brought a practiced gracefulness to their movements, but the unease still remains. If you take away the unease in your movement, it shifts inwards to another dimension, where it is easy to find expression. In other words, it will build into your energy. In time, this disquiet on the level of energy manifests as disease. In the Isha Yogic Center, many seekers are put into such intense states of activity that one might wonder why those on the spiritual path are working 20 hours a day. In popular perception, spirituality means someone half dozing under a tree. This is far from the truth. The intense physical work at Isha is an integral part of spiritual journey. I want these people to finish all their allotted karma in a certain period of time. It is impossible to perform physical activity without your thought, emotion, and energies being involved. The same activity can, of course, be performed with different levels of involvement. Those who work only for a livelihood often feel constrained and suffocated. But when you are deeply involved in your work on every level, you will find activity invigorates you. It does not exhaust you. Once you expend this karma, there will be no need for a compulsive action. After this, action will be by choice. When the allotted karma has been worked out, you can ask a person to simply sit still, and there will be no struggle. The body will comply effortlessly. In the higher level of Isha programs, we put people through immense body-breaking activities so that afterwards they are able to sit without moving. Meditation now happens naturally. When energy allotted for physical activity remains unused in the system, you cannot meditate because the energy will make you restless and ill at ease. There are certainly other aspects to disease, environmental factors, as well as karmic reasons, for genetic factors to personal karmic reasons, play a part in why energy functions in a certain way and causes disease. However, many people are ill because they are not handling their allotted karma sensibly. One aspect of energy being used to a considerable extent in today's world is mental energy. However, the overuse of mental energy leads to lopsided development and the invariable advent of disease. Consider a country's national budget. A certain amount is allocated for education, a certain amount for industry, a certain percentage for agriculture, development, defense, and so on. But if all these are not being expended, the economy suffers. The same happens within the body. Those who have led a complete life often reach a certain natural state of peace and balance when they age. As the allotted karma starts winding down, you may notice changes in elderly people. You might find that their sleep quota comes down, and when they do sleep, you might find it hard. You might find it that they sleep deeply. This could be a sign of the allotted karma is drawing to an end. The great karmic warehouse remains, but one installment has begun drawing to its close. A word of caution. Deep sleep does not necessarily mean the end of allotted karma, but in the elderly, it could be one of the possible indications. When one installment of karma is over, the inner turmoil recedes and a new serenity of equipoise descends. Some accomplished practitioners may go beyond their allotted karma. They could give them a certain aura of peace, but they have still not transcended their accumulated karma. They have moved from the retail shop to the warehouse, but they still have plenty of karma in stock. For the spiritual seeker, allotted karma can be seen as a cream of milk, as cream on the milk. It is the karma that has surfaced in this lifetime. If you boil the milk well, the cream can further increase. So the spiritual process is a way of cooking oneself sufficiently to pick up as much karma from your karmic warehouse as possible in this lifetime and deal with it while you are conscious and able-bodied. The goal for every freedom seeker is the same: to attend your karma now rather than wait for a life to throw it at you.